bringing you the latest news from Estacado Athletics. This is the Matador Fan Zone podcast from 100.7 The Score.
Welcome back to the High School Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score. I am Randy Rosetta. Estacado coach Eric Ward will be here shortly. We will jump into the Matador Fan Zone. As we wait on him, I'm going to run through the list of scores from last week. We already talked about what's coming up this week, and we'll go through those again in just a minute. But last week, big week in Lubbock in particular, there were a ton of games. Just everywhere you look, there was a game in Lubbock last Friday and last Thursday for that matter. We'll run through the list here. Friendship got District 2 6A play started by eking out a 48-47 win against Midland High. That was a game I covered. That was an incredible game with just a lot of athletes on the field in a 2-6A game, which kind of come to expect from that district. Abilene High and Coronado, we just talked to Andrew Roy and Campbell Stanek. Abilene High won 59-40, but I thought Mustangs showed some grit, some fight, some offensive explosion, which they need as they head into their stretch run. Monterey beat Lubbock High 70-7 in the battle for the Silver Spurs. Monterey is they've found their rhythm. They've really manhandled Coronado and Lubbock High back-to-back, and now they head into a road game at Tascosa that could be very pivotal in determining whether or not they're going to be a 3 or 4 seed in the playoffs. I have a hunch they're going to be in the playoffs. It's just a matter of where they're going to be in that pecking order. Lubbock Cooper topped Abilene Cooper 49-17. The Pirates are really playing well. Lost to Friendship and have really taken off since then. They're 3-0 in district. They go up to Paladuro on Thursday night. That looms as a pretty important game. Cooper's to the point now where they start kind of each win gets them not only into the playoffs, but kind of determines how close they get to winning a district championship. Liberty with a huge come-from-behind 43-40 victory against Perryton, which is who Estacado plays this week. That was Liberty's first ever district game, and they get their first ever district win. They scored late and then had a couple of fourth-quarter interceptions, one in the red zone and then one to seal it by Jackson Thomas in the fourth quarter. Big win for Liberty. I look forward to talking to Joe Sexton and the Patriots later this week on the High School Fan Zone. Trinity Christian dropped their district opener 17-0 to Fort Worth Christian. Great defensive effort by the Lions. Defense struggled a little bit. So they head down and take on the number 1 team in the state in TAPS Division II this week. I see a lot of Wards walking in now, so we know Eric's here. Eric's got to be here with them. So Lubbock Christian began their district season with a 56-20 win against Lake Country. The Eagles are kind of like Lubbock Cooper. They've found their rhythm after a loss, and they're really playing well. Then the Matadors, who we're going to talk to and about and with here in a minute, had a really exciting game against Levelland in their district opener, won 28-23. Eric Ward got the best of his former Texas Tech receiving department guru, Lyle Leong. 28-23. We'll talk much more about that game. And I mentioned the Matadors go up to Perryton Friday night, way up north in the Panhandle, 7 p.m. That game's not on Raymar Network, but our guy Nick Long will have the call on that one, 7 p.m. I'm not sure what Perryton's home field is. I just know that that's a long way up there. Eric Ward has joined us, and I see all 5 of them. I see 5 Wards here with him. You guys are not far from being able to field a pretty good basketball team.
I think that is a basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, the little guy may have to play point guard for now, but I bet he can handle the rock. So, how are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
I think I texted you. Last 2 weeks, mood's a little bit different.
Yes, sir.
And I would imagine that's picked up with your team as well. You can kind of see an uptick in the way they're carrying themselves.
Yes, sir. It's been a good last couple of weeks, and we're going to continue to work hard and try to get better each and every day, and that's the goal.
Back-to-back wins, but I think besides this being a district win against Levelland, winning a close game where you had to do some things in the fourth quarter to nail it down, I think that's a good step for your guys too, because blowing somebody out is always nice and easy on the coach, but you want to see how your guys perform and come out on top. And this time, after some close calls going the other direction, you guys got one this time. That's a good stepping stone for you.
Right, and it all, relies back to the way they practice and I'm on them hard in practice, and I always tell them, like, you always result to your training, and you always result to the way you practice. And so we had a good week of practice, and they got after it, and they practiced hard, and they were flying around from point A to point B, and I'm just happy we came out victorious.
We talked when Bobby and Cedric were here last week. We talked about how Bobby's future potentially could be on the defensive side. Boy, Bobby made the two of us look awfully smart, didn't he? Because he played a heck of a game on defense. My guy that covered the game said that well, I knew who Bobby was. I didn't know Bobby could play defense like that. I said, yeah, he's ever since he was a freshman, that's kind of the rumblings is this guy may be a college, even beyond defensive end or outside linebacker, and he certainly filled that bill the other night.
Yes, Bobby is a special talent. He can be a menace on defense, but he's just his stature alone and his aggressiveness is just is second to none. And that goes without saying. Everything that you said, and he's just a special talent.
And the little brother's got some speed, doesn't he? Not that Bobby doesn't, but Cedric's got that once in a lifetime kind of speed.
Yeah, Cedric is very explosive. He reminds me a little bit of Percy Harvin.
Okay.
And so, I see some shades of Percy Harvin within his play. Overall, he's a great kid, but he works hard. And he practiced probably the hardest because he's so consistent and he wants to do a good job. So that goes without saying. Both those Ross brothers, they're very special.
The phrase is that a picture can tell 1,000 words. The last loss you had, there's a picture of my guy sent in of Cedric. He looked crushed. He looked like that loss really got to him. And ever since then, you guys have won 2 games in a row, and he's played big. And that picture sticks in my mind that he didn't like losing. He was tired of coming up on the short end. And when you've got your best players who take it that hard, that's a good recipe.
Yes, that means a lot. You have your team being led by the players and them to take it so much to heart. Nobody likes losing. And, but at the end of the day, I'm building great character within them and showing them leadership. And then that's translating into changing the culture as far as, getting results that they want. And so that goes without saying. I'm very proud of each and every one of them.
And that culture has resulted in 2 wins in a row. It sure seems like Estacado's starting to find its stride here as we hit the home stretch of the season. 3 games left. You guys have the bye the last week, which I think you and Lubbock Cooper have that weird schedule where you play 10 and then get a week off. So we'll come back and talk more about Estacado's win and what's coming up on the Matador Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score.
Breaking down Estacado sports. This is the Matador Fan Zone podcast from 100.7 The Score.
Welcome back to the Matador Fan Zone on a Monday night. I'm Randy Rosetta. This is 100.7 The Score. To my left is Estacado coach Eric Ward, whose team is now 3-4, 1-0 in district after finding a way to get past Levelland 28-23. Back and forth game. I don't know if I'd call it a shootout, Eric, because 28-23, that's a good amount of points, but tell me how it played out in your mind. What did you guys have to do to find a way past them?
I think we just had to get off the field on third downs and convert on each possession that we had on offense in that second half, and that was the difference in the game.
And we mentioned Bobby before the break. It sounds like he cranked it up on defense coming out of the third quarter, kind of took the game over on that side of the ball.
Yes, sir. Bobby stepped up, and, it was a huge momentum swing for us, and the kids fed off of that, and they got it done.
Ran for 272 yards, which with you guys' weapons, that's kind of what you want to do. I know you're a receiver, so I'm sure you'd like to fling the ball around a little bit. When you got Bobby Ross, Cedric Ross, James Bozeman, Donovan Therese, you got all that speed and experience. Running the ball is not a bad plan of attack when you got the ball in your hands.
Yeah, you just you want to do what the opposing team allows, and so that's the name of the game. And so just going out there and just making the most out of each possession is what we're after.
And then the flip side of that is you only allowed 110 rushing yards, and that's, I think you can go back to even Mike Leach and the way he ran his offense. If you can run the ball and stop the other team from running the ball, it doesn't matter what it looks like. That's going to be a pretty good equation.
Yes, sir. Defense and offense, they practice hard all week, and I'm just proud of the effort that they showed out there on game day.
Effort, that's a word you've used a lot here, and not that your guys weren't playing with effort before these last two games, but how has that effort elevated a little bit more these last couple of weeks to get you guys over the hump?
Well, they're playing with more discipline, and a disciplined team would be without them beating themselves is what you're aiming for. And then, a player-led team is the most thing that you want to coach. The best thing you want to coach in your kids to go out there and lead each other. But it always starts with the discipline.
And I know a lot of people think of discipline that looking at penalties, and it's got to be no, it's not always just penalties. I'm looking right here. You didn't have a turnover the other night either, and that was a bugaboo for when you guys weren't winning games. You don't give the other team extra chances. That's a good game plan as well. Right.
You can't turn over the ball, especially against sound football teams. Against anybody, that'll put you in a deficit real fast. And
I saw a couple of pictures. You and Lyle got together before and afterwards. Was that hard coaching against a friend, or had you coached against that close of a friend before?
No, sir. I've coached against friends before, but it wasn't hard. At the end of the day, our job is to lead young men, and it's not personal between us, but we're really good friends, and so we always keep that in mind. And we talked every day, just like we talked before, and so it doesn't sway our relationship or friendship any way. But he's a great guy, and he understands.
It makes it a little bit easier to go to those district meetings, though, when you've gotten the win.
Well, yes, sir.
Well, somebody's got to win the games, right?
Yes, sir.
Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. If you've got to be the guy that wins, so be it. So
there we go.
You got to turn the page pretty quick, though, because you go up to Perryton. We were talking in between breaks. You've never been to Perryton. Have you ever been to Oklahoma? Because you're pretty close by the time you get to Perryton.
Well, I'm from North Texas, so yes, sir. I'm about 15 minutes from the border of Oklahoma, especially from Lawton, Oklahoma. I've been to Oklahoma many times, but I've never been to Perryton. That's a different type.
I don't know that you can get close to Perryton and not be in Perryton. That's how far up it is. Liberty coach Joe Sexton, that's where he's from. And he was telling me some stories about going up there, and that's a day trip. That's not just a get there and back. So this is now Estacado's been in the same district with Perryton a time or two before, so it's nothing new to your fans. I don't know if any of your guys have played up there before, but when you get up there Friday, you're going to be facing a team that, because your district's small, they're in desperation mode right away, because Liberty came back and beat them the other day 43-40, so they're behind the 8 ball already. We're going to talk a little bit more about what you guys have to prepare for, but the thing that jumps off my page right away is that they lost that game, but Perryton had 526 yards against Liberty, so they did some things well. The only thing they didn't do is get the win. So it's gonna take some prep and kind of another step forward, I think, for you guys when you get up there. We're going to talk more about the Estacado Matadors heading up north to take on the Perryton Rangers in the second District 2 4A Division II game of the season. That's 7 p.m. Friday at Perryton. It's not on Raymar. It's on a different network with Nick Long and whoever his color guy is going to be. But that it's a pretty key game for Estacado. We'll be back to talk more about their game at Perryton on the Matador Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score.
Bringing you the latest news from Estacado Athletics. This is the Matador Fan Zone podcast from 100.7 The Score.
Welcome back to the Matador Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score. I am Randy Rosetta. I'm joined by Eric Ward, first-year Estacado coach, who's finally – I'm going to ask you this. Those first couple of weeks were tough because you got here late the summer, had to kind of do stuff on the fly, get used to your guys, got your guys get used to you. Do you feel more comfortable now? Is it fair to say that everything's sort of calmed down a little bit?
Well, yeah. When you start late, you have to do everything on the fly. You got to hire staff. You have to teach your way of doing things. You have to change the way that they're used to doing things in some aspects. And you got to teach defense and offense. And so I didn't have the leisure of doing that over the course of the spring or the summer. And so, I met most of my kids the second week of August.
Right.
And so, within doing that, you're gonna take some. There's gonna be some trials within that growing process because it's all a process. And so now I think we're getting to that point where we can kind of settle in, and we know what we're capable of, and we just got to go out there and just continue to practice hard and create those opportunities for our players to go do what they do to help the team.
To me, the routine has to become routine before it's a routine, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
You mentioned them getting used to you. Each day in practice, you have to kind of chip away and know. And I would think by now, and you can kind of see it maybe in the results on the field, that they come to practice, they know what to do, they know what to expect, they know what you're going to demand from them, and that's paying off week by week.
Yes, sir. Like you said it, the routine is everything, the routine in the system. And once they get used to that, they can kind of settle in and kind of find their own groove with it. And so that takes time.
And one advantage, you had disadvantages getting here as late as you did. One advantage you had some guys who have been around, some leaders, and those guys the cream has risen to the top a little bit, I think, with the Rosses and Donovan Torres and James Bozeman and Big V, Rashandrick. I'm always worried I'm going to butcher that name when I say it. I'm pretty proud of myself. I got that one. Rashandrick Smith, which he had the big special teams play the week before, and then we had a photo from the game the other day where I think he was putting the fear of God in that young man across from him in this photo. That's a big young man. When you can kind of put him in your offensive line and build around him, that's not a bad place to start.
Not at all, but getting the kids to learn who you are, learn who the coaches are, it means a lot. And so we don't preach results, we preach relationships. And so we know that building relationships with our kids and getting that trust level high, they're going to go out there and they're going to compete even higher because they're only going to play as high as their trust level is. And so we're seeing some good things with them, and they're practicing hard. And so credit out to all the coaches that are putting in the work. Yeah,
you mentioned you had to hire your coaches on the kind of on the fly. So not only players having to get used to you, coaches have to get used to each other too. I mean, those guys, you've got relationships, but it's one thing I was in the military. We were just talking about the Army. It's one thing to get thrown into a group of guys and be expected to go the same direction, but it takes some time to figure out how do we step in that same direction.
Yes, sir. It's all a process. Life is a process. And so anything you do is going to take time. And so as long as you're, chipping away, chopping the wood and carrying the water and, trusting the process and keeping faith in the process, it's gonna all pay dividends.
Well, it's real quick. We'll talk about Perryton here. I mentioned they put up 526 yards, 40 points, and lost. Gave up a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter, had a couple of turnovers. When you've looked at them on video, what do you guys have to be prepared for?
Well, the quarterback's explosive. They have explosive receivers. The offense is pretty good. The interior D-line is pretty good. And so, you just got to be prepared to play disciplined football. And, that you're not going to play at home, so that'll be different for them. But you got to go in there and play sound football, just play the next play, each play, and just go as hard as you can from point A to point B for 4 to 6 seconds. So that's what I preach to them in practice, and I have faith that they'll go do it. It's just, just keeping the goal, and that's playing for your brother.
And you guys have to be ready for a team that's desperate, not only playing at home, but they're desperate. Because like I said, in your district, they've lost their first district game. You go 0-2, all of a sudden things get dicey. So they're very desperate for a win. You guys have to kind of match that.
Yes, sir. Each day in practice, you got to, do the best you can to replicate the opposing team, and you got to get after your own players to go out there and compete as high as they can in practice, because it's all about how you practice.
Yep.
And so I'll
watching
leave it at
your practice early in the year, I know you guys get down to business.
Yes, sir. I'm hard on them, and I know what it takes for you to be successful, and actually I want them to be great young men over the course of the time that I'm with them in practice, and I'm just instilling that work ethic and character in them so they can be successful in life.
And that's been the Matador Fan Zone on 100.7 The Score. We'll be back tomorrow night with Lubbock High and Monterey.